Hello and welcome to the e-commerce flow driven CEO podcast. I'm thrilled to have Charletta Jean Louis all the way from Dallas, Texas. I nearly said Florida. I don't know what made me say Florida, but Dallas, Texas is not anywhere near Florida, I don't think. Is it, Charletta? It's so nice to have you on this show. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be.
Great, that's great. Well, we've got a lot to unpack today, Charletta, because you are one woman with a lot of heart and soulful power, I will say, versus just that power. But in terms of founder and general partner at Mighty Oaks Capital Partners, or MOCP, a Silicon Valley-based venture capital firm dedicated to empowering underrepresented founders at the pre-seed, seed, and Series A stages. With over 2 decades of experience across real estate, tech, security, and the SMB sectors, it sounds like you've guided countless entrepreneurs through critical stages of growth, including that product market fit, strategic partnership, and successful fundraising. But in addition to this role, you're also serving as CEO of Blam Retail. I love that name, Blam, and I'll have to ask you how you got that name. But it's a company that leverages AI to create tailored websites for the convenience store industry. And that expertise that lies in identifying potential, building strong teams, and fostering investor relationships to drive startup success. So it's almost like you've got two worlds going on in terms of where you play the venture capitalist from a seeding, etc. perspective, but then you're also in the thick of it yourself as this, business that's scaling and working with other companies as well. Tell us, how did you find your way into all of this, and how did you find your way to having two companies?
Interestingly, I wanted to be in law enforcement when I was just a kid. At the age of 18, I filled that dream by becoming a police officer in Silicon Valley. Following that, I went back to Houston, continued my career, and I got the bug to do something different. And that landed me at the Athlete's Foot as a franchisee. Now, I had no experience in retail, but because it was a franchise, they gave me the blueprint. I followed that and I listened to customers. As a result of that, our company outperformed stores that had been in business for decades by 30%.
Wow.
And fascinating. So, and so did the corporate company. So when people wanted to franchise, the new franchisees would visit my store and basically pick my brain on what I was doing that they would be able to replicate. That was my first introduction even into consulting. So following that, I had an opportunity to work for DoD and DOS, and while there, I learned about the startup world. It was just fascinating because I enjoy puzzles, I enjoy putting things together, kind of breaking them apart, seeing how they work. And so it was a great segue into startups because that's basically what startups do. So I became a director of an incubator that had a presence in 30 countries. And as a result of that, I had the opportunity to see the nuances from a founder's perspective as well as from an investor's perspective. And I really liked the investor side because there was just so much variety, right? I didn't feel like I would, you know, um, outgrow it, in a sense. When founders build their companies, many of them want to have an exit and then they move on to the next thing. Whereas an investor, I felt like that flow could just continue on and I could just see different companies all the time. And how might I be able to provide help for them beyond a check? That was
Mhm.
always very important to me.
Yeah.
And and that's how I grew Mighty Oaks Capital Partners. And one of the most important things about deciding on if we're going to engage with a company is if we can offer value beyond a check. then that leads me into glam retail. So glam retail engages with brick and mortar businesses in order to provide shelf space for founders that have products that they're just getting started, right? And we're able to provide that shelf space within retail, but at the same time, helping the retailers with a digital presence through websites and marketing where they might not have the bandwidth because we're engaging with money.
Wow. So how do you do it all? Like how do you juggle it all? Like if you're like you've got your own you've got like it's impressive, right? Like how do you keep your cup full? How do you like it's intense working with startups. I've come from a startup background myself. I've now got my own business in startup. I mean, as an investor, like I love the whole notion of, we don't just hand a check over. We want to make sure it's a check with value. And as a founder, as in a startup, you're wearing that many different hats. So if you're investing, like, do you have a limit of how many companies that you invest in at one given time so that you can ensure that the value you're providing is real and or is true value, or like, and then you've got Blam on as well. I was going to say on the side. Yeah, how do you do it all?
Well, they complement each other, really.
Yeah,
So we are working with maybe about 4 or 5 founders that have physical products that's conducive for the stores,
yeah,
right? We then make those introductions where it's appropriate.
yeah,
And I certainly couldn't do it alone, right? I've got a team,
yeah.
and with the right people that are as mission driven is equally important because I wouldn't do it all just myself. I'd have no time, for mental health. And that's equally important, particularly for founders who are head down morning to night,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
A pretty streamlined process of how we engage with founders and the ones that we are creating value for. We look through our Rolodex to see where strategic partnerships would be appropriate as it relates to go to market. Um, our marketing team, our funding team. So we have these teams that we move the founders through the funnel of what their needs are, but we do a deep dive so that we understand what those needs are.
Yeah, right. And do you do a deep dive not just into like their product and their tangible product, but into them as individuals, them as leaders and all that as well? Like do you mentioned the word mental health before, which is so important when it comes to being fit and a founder, because there's all the highs, the lows, and all the in-betweens. You pivot, like you have all these expectations at times that it's going to go like this and then it goes like that, or it goes like that. And so then it's just moving around. How do you, when you do the deep dive, yeah, do you go inwards as well? Like do you look within at the founder as well as the product market fit? Do you look at their team as well if they've got a team as a startup?
Because we invest in people
Mm,
more than products, right? And if the founder is coachable, if we're able to relate to their vision, if there are areas where they have gaps, how might we be able to help them fill those gaps? And sometimes that just means having a listening ear.
yeah,
And everyone on the team understands that. So founders know they can reach out. We work with founders across the globe, so the time zones matter, but we have team members that are in different time zones as well.
yeah,
So
yeah. I love that. And I love the fact that it's almost like it's borderless, isn't it? In terms of you can work anywhere around the world, especially with, you've got AI, but then you've also got your teams as well. It's just like this kind of, it's like this web of collaboration, if you like, in terms of from a global perspective.
indeed, and then we do have founders that have an anticipation that we are a part of their team,
Yeah.
right? And we are to an extent, but the heavy lifting really still is on their side, right? And we don't want to make the mistake of thinking that okay, they're helping me, which means they're going to do it for me. It doesn't mean that at all, right? But we are here to help fill in the gaps where needed.
Yeah, it's a that you know what? It's funny you say that because I actually had it in my the back of my mind to ask you about that because I come across that a little bit at times too in terms of especially from a if you're consulting or you're strategically advising or you're coaching that there's a fine line between, I call it, I don't necessarily love the word help because I just find it like, oh my goodness, something's like it's dire. It's like for me, it's more of a guiding and supporting sort of, that's what you are. But I was going to ask you exactly that question in terms of what do you do when a founder is sees you as somebody that isn't just guiding or supporting or helping, but they're expecting you to do the work? Because I don't know about you, but some days I'm like, just do the effing work. Like you've got to do the work. Like this is your baby, this is your product, this is your business. Like I can't do it for you. And I don't, like this, you have those moments where you're just like, this is
Right.
yours. Like it's yours for the taking. Like you have to take. Do you know what I mean? It's a really interesting. Um, I don't know. I think it's for me, and I'm sorry, I'm asking a question, but I'm also answering it because I've just been observing this a little bit of late, or thinking about it more than anything. And I think it comes down to those types of founders or leaders, they're lacking that confidence. So then it's like, how do you give them the tools, embrace them with the confidence so that they know they've got this. They know that they are more than capable of doing this versus relying on somebody else to do it for them.
I think that a lack of confidence keeps up at different incremental times for everyone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What I tend to do is ask the questions that they know.
Yeah.
Like, why did you get into this? What's going to look like success for you? And if I really am familiar with some of the things that they've gone through, how did they, uh, what was the solution to, a problem that they had or an employee conflict or anything that I know that they've overcome themselves and only they could do it, right? It's just like going to the gym. I can't go to the gym for you and give you the muscles.
Yeah. So true. Yeah, the gym's a good one. I like that analogy. I've heard it before, but you're right. I can't give you the muscles. You've got to go and do the work yourself. You've got to keep going. Yeah.
Is what builds that confidence back up that you can do this. You're made for it. If you were not, you would not have undertaken this. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to pivot or that things don't always work out. But that might have been just the lesson you needed to learn or the workout that you needed to build a muscle for your next venture or your next whatever that might be.
Mm,
Right?
mm.
No,
No, exactly. It's funny, you've just tapped into when you signed on to the podcast or booked into the podcast, I should say. It said the most powerful form of influence is earned through consistent presence, not loud performance. And it's somewhat what we're talking about here, because you just mentioned the good old C word, which is consistency or consistence. It's easy to be impressive once, it's much harder and far more valuable to be dependable always. I think that goes a long way when it comes to founders or leaders in startups. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
yeah. Because you have the leadership role doesn't mean that you know everything all the time at every moment, right? Um, it depends on how you're able to work through your problems. Keep showing up, even if you don't know, even if you're just unsure of what the outcome is going to be. Keep showing up. And, right. And people see that and they're inspired by it. And you align or go to people that might be able to help you even just work through whatever it is you're going through. Because trust me, there is someone out there that has gone through what you're going through, what you gone or are going through, and they could perhaps give you that inspiration that you need, right? And it could come from anywhere.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I love that. Keep showing up. I think, and I mean, I've been also, that's another thing I've been thinking about of late in terms of just, well, what is consistency? Because consistency is keep showing up, but you have different seasons of your life. You have different seasons as a leader, your business as well. And for me, consistency can also be non-linear in terms of it does not mean you have to do exactly the same thing every single day of the week. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but consistency can be just keep showing up and taking that one step forward. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that we have to be on and doing it this way. And if you don't do it that way, and if you're not consistent this way, like, don't get me wrong, I'm all about consistency and structure, but I'm noticing even within myself, starting my own company, 2 years ago nearly, that you can't be accurately consistent every day. Well, I can't be. Like, in terms of, am I going to post on social media every day of the week to promote myself? I've tried that, but it's putting more pressure on myself to it's just another thing that's adding on, right? So what does your consistency look like that gives you that flexibility and that non-linear way of ensuring that you're consistent, but without the pressure of then, oh shit, I'm behind. I haven't done this. I haven't done that. I'd love to get your view on that. And am I rambling? Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Because
Oh, I'm sorry, I've just
I
lost you.
okay, I try to set my day the night before.
Yeah.
I have no idea of what I'm going to feel like the next morning,
Yeah.
right? That I get up in the morning and go, I am just not feeling it.
Yeah.
So I give myself permission to not feel it that day, right? But that doesn't mean that every day I will wake up not feeling it,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
For whatever reason that day, I might just need to listen to my body and just take a break, right? I still need to have the calls, but I don't do I don't just jam pack my day when I'm feeling that way, right? I'll still show up and still do what's required of me. But instead of working until 9 o'clock at night, I might, clock out at 5, or something like that. But I'm consistently notorious for working out. That's just what I love to do, right? But I'm also in a position that I can do that.
Yeah.
I had little kids, I'd have to plan around them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Depending on what's going on in your own personal life, showing up for and being present for family that takes you away from work,
Yeah.
right? All of those things.
Yeah, so true. And do you talk to and do you coach, guide the founders that you work with, in terms of that it is a whole being aspect to who you are as a leader, that's where sustainable success comes from, especially from someone like me who has had experienced burnout where you crash and burn and you can't, I mean, no founder, and I'm happy to be proved wrong, but I don't think it's true. You can't continue to work 100 plus hours a week and expect to, be thriving. It just doesn't work that way. Like, it catches up with you in the end. It caught up with me in the end. Do you know what I mean? Like, it catches up. So, like,
Right.
exactly what we're talking about here. Like, you have your days, and so then, yeah,
Yeah. And so then you have to evaluate, like you have to constantly evaluate where
yeah,
you are. and do that temperature check of how much longer can I do this? Am I still happy about it? Does this still bring me joy to do? Right? Um, when you've found your passion, it's one of the things you'd love to do it if you could do it, even if you didn't get paid, as long as, like everything was taken care of, right? This is all you would do. And at other times, it's like, okay, I'm doing this because I need to pay the bills. And it starts to become a drag. And, all I'm doing all day is this, right? And so you have to constantly evaluate where you are and be willing to listen to that inner compass that's telling you you might need to do something differently.
Mm, mm, absolutely. What do you see then for, because you worked with underrepresented, I think you said underrepresented founders at the pre-seed, seed, and Series A stages. What do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities for those founders at those different stages? And is that too big a question, too broad a question?
So at the pre-seed stage, usually founders don't have traction in the form of revenue. So they've not de-risked the venture enough. But if they've been able to talk to vendors and potential customers and put them on a wait list, and there's a lot of feedback that comes back from that type of traction is also valuable. All right. At the seed stage, investors would like to see some traction in the form of revenue, whatever that might be. Right? And depending on the industry, the company, that could be varied, from one spectrum to the other.
Yeah.
For Series A, they should be ready to scale at that point, all right, where they figured a lot of things out and they've really de-risked the investment from investors that are interested in deploying capital into their venture. What I've seen in terms of founders' readiness is not really understanding what stage they're at,
Yeah.
right? The amount of capital that they're asking or seeking to raise. So in the pre-seed, we'd like to see an MVP, right? But if it's too heavy in R&D or licensing and things like that, that might be a non-starter for a lot of investors. So the
Mm,
founder working. The other thing that we see too is they have a few customers and then they think they're ready for, raising capital. But what happens is even if they're successful in that raise, they're having to give up too much equity in their company.
yeah.
Just recently heard about a founder that was offered $500,000 for 100% equity in the company.
Shit. Did they take it?
Exactly. No,
I was going to say,
no.
like, I thought you said they were going to take it. I was going to go, whoa, like,
It matters from people who are experienced versus people who are not in terms of that and how desperate they are for the capital,
yeah,
right? Founder that I know of was building a fintech that was aimed at teaching youth in elementary to high school financial literacy. They were offered $200,000 for 40% of their company. Well, by the time they get to Series A, they might have 10% left in the company. That's great for, a company that's raising capital to IPO, right? But not for a company that still has a lot to figure out.
yeah, yeah. Which is a good segue to like what do you see as a general And again, this could be too general, but like, do you generally see businesses in your experience working with founders and startups? When do you generally see, when you talked about pre-seed and they're not generally making revenue at that point to seed? What from a timing perspective, is there a timing that you see around? Is it like 2 years, 3 years, or is it 1 year, or it just depends on the product market fit?
In terms of funding for that company.
Yeah, funding, but also taking off in terms of you seeing the company. Like if we let's talk about pre-seed, right? Like at pre-seed, it's like it's not making revenue. What's
Right.
the cycle? What do you generally see as the cycle from pre-seed to seed? Yeah,
So at the pre-seed, one of the fundamental things that I look for first is how do we increase that revenue?
yeah,
Because we're going to de-risk everything.
yeah,
So in that, with that in mind, we start looking for strategic partnerships,
yeah.
alignments going to get them to revenue as quickly as possible.
Possible. Yeah,
That could possibly mean aligning with a blogger or an influencer that really likes what that company is doing, right? And might even be willing to put some sweat equity into it,
yeah,
right? Because when the company isn't generating revenue, the thing that they have of value is the equity and the belief that that equity is going to turn into a um, some type of financial reward in the end, right? And so we start trying to find that pathway to revenue. What is it going to take to get them into market? Are we aligned with our visions for how they're going to get into market, and how well can we execute?
yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's cool. What would be your one piece of advice that you would give to anyone wanting to start their own business? Pardon?
Follow your dream.
Follow your dreams.
Follow your dreams wherever it is they might lead you. And I think try to set the proper expectations, right? We live in this world of instant gratification, and our attention spans are about 26 characters. But building a startup takes a lot of work,
Oh my gosh,
right?
yeah.
It's depending on your vision for that startup, you can work on it for 10 years and just be getting started, right? In the form of where you want it to go. Are you building for legacy? Are you building for exit? Are you building because I need to make some money and I've had this idea for a long time and people tell me that they like it, and so if the people closest to me like it, then I think other people will like it. So, right, whatever it is your vision for it is, follow it, even if people don't see it in the beginning.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think I'm building for legacy. But I have this instant gratification at times where I'm like, I just need the money. I just need this. I just need that. Like it's just this. It's all the feels when you're following your dream, I've got to say. Sorry, what did you say?
That's why you try to get to that revenue as quickly as possible, because it relieves some of that pressure
Percent.
of I've got money right now. I've got to make it right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I can make it right now. I've got to raise capital. I've got to raise capital. And it's like when you need to raise capital and it's just such a dire, you have to have it. It's almost like you're blood in the water with sharks.
Yeah, so true. So true. Oh my gosh. Well, Charlotte, I've had such a good chat with you, and I'm conscious that at the start of our pre hitting record, there was a bit of me just, faux parring. But what I don't know if I've got any more questions because you've just said follow your dream. Is there any wise words, any tips, tools, advice you would give to, here's one for you, give to a founder today or a startup that is on the cusp of their dream, shining bright, but also it could also go the other way. And they're sitting there with their heads in their hands going, I think I'm just going to give it up. I'm going to and when you have those days where you're just like, this is too hard. This is too hard. What would you say to them?
To find your tribe. They are out there. That might look like going to meetups. And it doesn't have to be a business meetup, right? It could be a hiking meetup because you never know where you might find that alignment. Somebody in that group could be just the person that you needed to connect with. So
Yeah.
sometimes you get out of your head and just get out there and be willing to have at least a day of I'm not going to think about my company today. I'm just going to go out there, meet people, talk to people, share what I'm doing, kind of get from behind the computer or whatever it is you're working on because you need those mini resets from time to time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. How do we find out more about you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I have a pretty visible presence on LinkedIn. You can reach me at investors at Mighty Oaks Capital Partners, or if you're interested in applying for capital, you can do so on the mockp.com's website.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know it's probably dinner time or maybe kids time to get the kids ready for bed. The little ones. But
Yep, but it's the end of the day, so I kind of get to relax a little bit and just kind of do my reflection of the day
oh
and
nice.
think for tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, powering down. I call it powering down for the day. It's like to get you prepared to power up for the morning. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte. I've really enjoyed our chat, and I'll be sure to share your contact details in the notes. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.